Welcome everybody to the last POG reading of this season. Yeah. Norman Fischer and Charles Alexander. Thank you both for being here. Thank you all for being here for this last reading of the season. This is our 29th season, which means that next year is POG's 30th year in existence, since 1996. So some really exciting stuff that we're planning in the works, but I hope you all stay tuned to the things that are happening in POG because we're going to make next year a big bash. As things happen around us, defunding of arts agencies, defunding of anything you could look at or shake a stick at. It's more important than ever to have community members helping us out and keeping the lights on, keeping the poets fed, and keeping the arts community still going here in Tucson. So really want to make a special plea to all of you here to go to pogartstucson.org, correct? And make a donation or give us a donation at the door here. And thank you to those of you who already have for this particular reading. But any support that you can give us really will go a long way towards making next year a big and exciting year. As you all know, because you're here, POG brings poetry and its connected arts to Tucson. We bring poets from all over the U.S. and beyond. We bring together our local Tucson community of poets. We organize not just poetry readings, but other kinds of events like the Sabino Poets, which Lisa Periali Martin takes on. And so we have all sorts of things going on, and we want to make sure that we can continue to do that. I also want to welcome you all to Wave Archive, to this space, which is a space that hosts experimental music primarily, but also poetry events like these here in downtown Tucson. So please look out for us on social media and also take flyers because we have all sorts of events. For instance, tomorrow night we have an installation opening here in this space. If you look above, you can see some cell phones hanging above you. We're going to have a cell phone water feature in this space in a parking lot. So I don't know what's going to happen, but we're gonna roll with it, which is kind of what art is about. We have some major sort of helpers to thank. Jack's Press has always been closely united with POG and has been a huge supporter for 30 years. The Arizona Commission for the Arts is a supporter, the UA Poetry Center, as well as the UA English Department, as well as individual donors who have helped. And again, please help us out if you can. POG has always been driven by community. It's been driven by bringing friends, family together. There's a little kid up there, my kid. And making sure that we sort of celebrate the work around us together. And so in that spirit too, I also want everyone who's on the POG board to raise their hands. And if you don't feel sort of safe or invited and just happy in this community, please come talk to us, and we want to make it right for you. The last thing I want to say is, in thinking about community, recently, there's conflicts everywhere. But there's a recent conflict in which some people, as an explanation for doing the wrong thing, say, well, there are multiple realities, and we have to acknowledge or somehow be inside of these multiple realities. And maybe by learning about these multiple realities, both sides, you might even say, of an issue, we can therefore come to some kind of conclusion. But I also want us to acknowledge that there are maybe multiple perceptions or interpretations, but we also do have a community, a communal space in which we exist. and that there are things that have happened. There is history. And to acknowledge history, to acknowledge the land in which we're on, to acknowledge the spaces that we occupy, to acknowledge the fact that we live in a reality that we can accept and be in together, I think is an important part of the work we do as poets and artists. And to simply say, oh, let's look at that side and look at this side as if they're somehow balanced, and to suggest that there's not a consensual reality that we can somehow work out, seems to me to be wrong-headed. We might be able to talk about this after the poetry reading. But I do want us to sort of acknowledge then that sense of the layered and multiple histories in which we occupy, and the layered and multiple perceptions that we have, and yet also say, you know what? History has happened, and don't change it, and don't lie about it, and say that that's another reality. So here's to poetry as truth-telling. Here's to POG. Thank you all for being here. So again, we have two readers tonight, Norman Fischer and Charles Alexander, and both of our readers are going to be introduced by Cynthia Miller. And now I will invite Cynthia to come up and introduce our first reader.
Thank you for coming. You're in for a treat, I think. When our two old cats sit on Charles' lap, they do it for love. They don't mind that he is an artist, a poet, a traveler to China, a publisher of contemporary poetry, his Chax Press bringing some 250 books up for air so far, a printer of the fine press books, a father, a teacher, a partner. Cats don't mind and they don't care. They don't read poetry, but if they did, Charles would wow them with his poetry books from Chax, Cuneiform Press, Little Red Leaves, Singing Horse Presses. His books Hopeful Buildings, Near a Random Axe, Arc of Light, Dark Matter, Pushing Water, At the Edge of the Sea, Pushing Water to the Scaffolds, Truro Shift, and most recent book of poems, Time Being, started during the COVID pandemic, though that time, like all time, continues. If the cats did like poetry, Charles could read aloud, or better yet, sing these poems that deserve to be sung. Whether short poems, haiku, dedications, or borrowed phrases, catchy tunes we forgot we were humming, notes on how to be human, how to share our dumplings, his poems are filled with singular moments, states of being or occurrences that have no fixed duration. Each thing touched by words is part of something larger, unseen and present, fluid and inclusive. While you read, you can sing these poems too, for it's the sound and resonance of the words that forms a welcome in our sensibilities that makes us want to step into these poems, to follow the path through family, gardens, light, luck, open as the day or night, where we might find ourselves wondering and wandering face to face with what we love or know already. Okay, guys are gonna. Not just my opinion. The great poet Lynn Ginian once wrote, "Thinking is the experience of everyday living." Charles Alexander's work is a poetry of thinking, but it is experience, not difficulty, that wonderfully completes these poems, brings them very close. For the book Time Being, poet and playwright Will Alexander praises like this: a delight in language always turning in the prisms of invention and observation. In the Shobogenzo, that old Buddhist Dogen writes, "For the time being I stand astride the highest mountain. For the time being I move in the deepest depths of the ocean." Charles writes, "We sleep within the music, the desert music, the insensate music, where the dance begins, and we attend, bound into a whole by the poem that surrounds us."
I think she knows me. Okay, I don't think this will test your patience too much, but I'm going to read something I started writing on April 30th, so it's very young and new, and wanders and meanders. And I had a couple of things in my mind from the very beginning that just came to me when I started. And one was this line, the poem is the act of the mind in process of finding out. And I know that's kind of a misquotation of Wallace Stevens, but it's an intentional misquotation of Wallace Stevens. And these few lines from a poem by Robert Duncan called Yes, as a look springs to its face from the opening of the field. Poems come up from a ground, so to illustrate the ground, approximate a lingering of eternal image, a need known only in its being found ready. The force that words obey in song, the rose and artichoke obey in their unfolding towards their form. And this right now is called About and Around. If you've ever heard that phrase, around and about the house. Just flip it. I am, if that is the correct phrase, a wave of the hand. Not what causes the wave, not only the hand, but also am that to rise. A weave takes the day into some far night. A need makes the heart break, or step on a break, stop the weave, the leaves fall. And is only what connects, as if the parts contend or extend only so far without a helping hand. An and could be an end or not a breath, but two, three, and all that's left, or all that's left. I am that crustiness again. Not the one, or could be that one, two. We live in more than one body. Or could a curve of body be the path, the map, the unveiling or revealing science, yours or mine this morning? I and we have fucked it all up well and done, and still I am here, walking, making shapes on paper. A language runs through it all, and you. I hold up 5 fingers now, look through and over. Out the window are 2 tall Aleppo pines. The wind blows through them and blows them around and up and down. I hold up the 5 and wave. So do the pines in the light wind, in the world's time, the moment of holding up the hand. Teach me love, he wrote, and wrote love, and knew that word, what it might feel like on a hand or in a poem, in a new and old body where we live when we think about it or think it about and around. In between, or between the acts and the other acts, inside one's own room or outside, in the dark that is inside, the light, and between us a drama always acts and always reacts in a different key. He cuts the meat, she cuts the grass. Anatomies are what we are, we see, or anomalies and autonomies. We restrain and retrain after and with accidents, the imperative, the force that drives us to the ground and into the air. Love sets its triumphs in the real, says one of the poets of love. But what is that? What is a triumph? What is the real? And what is love? In this time of loss, threat, fire, and distraction, is it a possibility? Is it a line to the water? The life, a line to the life, or past that mark, some other where, beyond? You are in me, and I am there too, and in you. The notion of democracy sings this song within us. Try one foot in the water first, and then the other, and soon, all wet, all under, all. It's only words. It's only words. So just use the mouth as it was made for sounding. For what comes in and what goes out, what else is there? I think to think, but sometimes also take steps upon the earth, within the circle of the stars, the other planets up there, as we see, as we think. We is I, times 2 or 3 or all the numbers. To number is to imagine an order or a bordering song. My friend writes of fire and death, but also knows fire is life, death is life. We hold a lease on life, a partial and infinite rental agreement. Nothing hurts, and everything hurts every day. This is why we last, and why we sometimes turn to sleep and turn toward. We eat together, as the law says, as the urge takes us down, and up to, gone, then gone again. I want to write through it, but not always clear what it is, or might be what being has an edge, where the line might lie, or overlap a limit, 2 limits. Raise the gate, clear now, go forward perhaps a little around, unbend the limbs, the liminals. Very little water on the ground, very little water in the air. Row, row, and row your boat. Stay in your lane, lay in your stay. Your day has come and come again. Listen to the birds each morning to be certain the day has begun. In and less far than, in and out again, contract and release, gather and disperse. And so we go, a machine world of one breath after another. This day I sat by the tree and breathed it, and it breathed me. Then I bent or bowed, and both of us carried on, as if we had separate lives, as if, maybe or maybe not. The or again, always the or. Will you or won't you? 10, 9, 8, counting down to some zero-sum game, though counting is not always a game, or could be, we just don't have the right numbers. The unexpected must come into the field of the poem, though we may not know it has come. It's true, there are no instructions, but plenty of reductions and even some resurrection, insurrection. Who did it anyway? And why at that time of day or that row of the garden? How do we move into the dance? And how do we not? That is, everything, molecule and moment, is dance. We are dance. Please, may I have this? My mind to me a mangle is. It's a quote from Robert Creeley. A mind, any mind. My mind is a mine or a mess or montage or mother load. Never mind, and I don't mind unless you do, unless we dive in, go under, swim if we can. If mind be a thing at all, no mind, no time, a knot, untied, united, under the tall Aleppo. The hawk seems to watch me, and I cannot help but watch him sit on the lower limb. We are on a limb, we are unlimbed and not unlimited. This morning under the pine with a fine air, inside the air that is inside the wave, world wave, hand wave, tree lines, 3 lines, enough. a wave of the hand, or just a wave of the hand through the water, or any fountain in a public place, a falling sheet of sound. If you hear it falling, are you inside it, or are your ears? To gather is to sift is to shift, to flow is to lose the mind that tracks the flow, to think not about but with and in the act of thought, of sift, of shift, of gather. The walk awake upon the face of one's own world or any other. Today and any other, maybe here or now, the pattern of stones leads to the bird of paradise, the ironwood tree, and 2 chairs under the pines. Arise and go poem with a few handfuls of words about and around, on a path not on the known map, to find a place or another place. The risk is in the undone. This is from my last book that came out a little more than a year ago. Some of you who know me well know that every once in a while I've got part of my head stuck in maybe the 16th century, about that, or some past time anyway. And so this is a poem that flows out of one of the poems in the poet Edmund Spenser's Amoretti, which is his 16th century sonnet sequence. It's absolutely wonderful. And so every of his 14 lines, I have a little response to each of those. So I'll pause between the sections. The first line I read is his. Shall I then silent be, or shall I speak? Who's talking and why, and with all that's happening, how dare anyone suggest silence, unless on this road lies the preservation of life for another occasion, another memorial, another poem, another day, day of word, day of silence, shall you speak? And if I speak, her wrath renew, I shall. Speech engenders anger, anger begets blood, wrath may sit alone on a throne, or will we be the phoenix, arise from flame and speak, speak now and ever? And if I silent be, my heart will break. Haven't we heard this before? Haven't all hearts broken? Break the pipe, break the stone, with the deer we run, who list hearts and hinds, darts to minds. Or choked be with overflowing gall. Choked, yoked, oak, fall the wall, the ever wall, broken we must stand, fallen we must fly. My overflow shall not be blood, my guilt shall not be soaked. Gall, fall not, call. What tyranny is this, both my heart to thrall? Shall I then follow when, alas and away, a word and a dream, a prison, a wall, in thrall, and both parties fail to find? The water washes over, the water washes under, the water washes away. And ache my tongue with proud restraint to tie. Ache each taste, each poisoned tongue taste, each unlit flame burn. What place restraint, what place pride, what tide ties us all, what tongue speaks? That nether I may speak nor think at all. Be quiet, be near, be afraid, be a feather, be a thought, trapped in a choke, crushed with a need. Be you or be I or nether underneath the ground, below the world, below the circles, below the middle of our years. Be, just be. Do not think, do not speak, not now. But like a stupid stock, in silence die. Stupid is as stupid does. Stupid fuck on the street, in the field. Stupid what silences, stupid what kills, stupid what defers a dream. Oh, stupid, your time is come and gone. Gone, gone, puff, puff of smoke, of ash, of fire. Yet I my heart with silence secretly. Forlorn, the poet's word, the word that echoes through silence, resounds in silence. And all the deer in the forest flee and choose not to put themselves in danger. But seek change, seek it now, seek it in a street that has laid bodies down. No, it was no dream. And we live in the knowledge. We die in the knowledge. We live again. When? We'll teach to speak, and my just cause to plead. Teach me song. Teach me love. Teach me more. I would I were open to it. I would you were open to it. I would it were open to us. Just a plea doesn't work. But a honk, a squeal, as train, as meditations, as ascension, as the hole at the end of the fall. Go through, go far, go justly. It was just a dream some of us had. And ache mine eyes with meek humility. Mine eyes have not seen the glory. Mine eyes have not shone with glory. If love is to reason as eyes to mine, what are knees to necks, ropes hanging from trees? Some have had humility far too long. Some do not know that word. My meek eyes, my humble eyes. Not long now, not long. Love learned letters to her eyes to read. Love is a game, love is a goat, love is a goal. Love wanders and sheds light where it goes. Let her have letters. Let her say what she sees. Read the book. Don't buy the coat. Read the book. Read it again. Which her deep wit, that true heart's thought can spell. Which? Wit who? Which who? With wit a true heart melts. A heart through thought consults. With wit spells the scene, casts a spell within which we spin, salvage. We'll soon conceive and learn to construe well. A child is given to us, a soon child, a son, a daughter. We conceive concepts. A child is a concept. A concept is a construction. A construction is to be learned. A child conceives and learns a concept. Soon a child, soon a concept, soon. Well, say you, well met, well joined, ink well, deep well of cool water. Let's work. I'm going to read something really short to finish. Okay. And I'm going to read something really short that I wrote yesterday in Norman Fischer's session, workshop at the University of Arizona Poetry Center. And I meant to type it out, but I didn't, so I have to depend on the ability to read my own handwriting, which is not necessarily a given. Where is it on the arc of the circle? Is it inside or outside? Is there a light there? Who are you anyway? Have you slipped yet? There is no bar on the circle on which you might hang, but hang you will. Or will not, or don't change the will. Maybe the won't. Ring, 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 ring. Call me tomorrow.
For the time being, Norman Fischer is a man of words, a poet, a lecturer, founder of Everyday Zen Foundation, father to twin sons, husband to fellow Zen teacher Kathy, at home on the edge of the western world at Muir Beach, California. He is also a Soto Zen priest, Buddhist priest. Where'd I go? Researching his biography, which was quite informative, on Wikipedia with some good pictures of you, I couldn't help but wish that his humanist interests and pursuits could be titles of new agencies or departments in our nation today. Like the Department of Interreligious Studies, the Department of Emotional Intelligence, the Department of Understanding Conflict, the Department of Mentoring Teens, the Department of Compassion Practice, Hospice Caregiving, and my favorite, Living as Nature. Norman has published more than 25 books, including some 15 books of poetry, 9 books on Zen, maybe more. It might be dated for Wikipedia entry. Numerous articles and interviews in both poetry and Buddhist magazines. You can find him everywhere. Let's see. That's the essentials. Oh, does he ever not have a pen in hand? I want to put that. When you go looking for some of these books, there's some here, including 5 by Charles at Jack's Press, the latest being Selected Poems, I think it's 1980 to 2013. And then a book called Precisely the Point Being Made, Slowly but Dearly, Conflict, Any Would Be If. Other titles worth your time are When You Greet Me, I Bow, The World Could Be Otherwise, On a Train at Night, Life as It Is, Magnolias All at Once, Escape This Crazy Life of Tears, etc., etc. Okay. Since 1979, his poetry has been called language-centered avant-garde poetry with a spiritual bent. So, when I asked Charles his thoughts about Norman's poetry, because he knows it better than I do, he wrote to me, in an early poem, Plant a Garden, Norman tells us nothing about planting the gardens, but that nothing includes lemonberry, persimmons, a flowering hedge, lavender, and citrus. Maybe it includes everything. Maybe we are not the ones planting anyway. Maybe it's the garden that plants us and plants the future as the poem ends. Kids plant trees. But does the poem end or just blend into and through the world, the air, the otherness of it all? And as we see in his book, Nature, quote, the world also has eyes, ears, nose, a mouth. Norman Fischer's friend, poet, and near neighbor Kit Robinson writes, if Gertrude Stein were a Zen monk family man living on a farm by the ocean at the tail end of the century, she would be Norman Fischer. And Charles says, maybe she is, maybe he is, maybe we are. So thank you so much. It's such a treat.
Thanks, Cynthia. It's really great to be here in Tucson. It's been a long time since I've been here, maybe 8 or 9 years. It's nice to see friends. And I want to, I'm happy, really happy to be reading with Charles. And I actually, maybe it's odd, but I actually would like to, first of all, say what a great reading that was. Fantastic. But it's not Charles's poetry, but Charles's work with checks that I want to dedicate my reading to tonight, because poets wouldn't be doing anything at all if it weren't for the work that you have done. And now, more than ever, we're kind of losing our presses and our distribution networks, and so that you have done this all these years and kept it up, steady, 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 with no end in sight, is something I really, really respect and appreciate, and I feel like we wouldn't be here without it. So, well, I don't know if this will work, but I didn't kind of time it, and I don't want to go on and on. You know, look at my watch now and see. But I there's a bunch of recent books. They've been coming so fast, I'm confused which is which. So I want to, I've made rather shortish selections from a number of them, because they're all different, and that's what I'm trying to do, and we'll see how much I have time for. But, so here's a book, On a Train at Night, and this book, which Cynthia mentioned, and this book was published in France in a there was a series that did an original book in English and a French translation, which both would come out at the same time. A wonderful, brilliant thing, right? And we would go to France and have a conference at the University Press. Gone. So this book may be, and because it's in France and the copies are probably in the basement of the University of Rouen, I probably will never see the copies. I don't know how to get them, so too bad, right? I feel. So I want to, this is a memorial reading for my book. Yeah. Anyways, just to give you an idea of what it is this is my, one of my modes of writing is Jewish mysticism. So this poem opens with a very long prologue, which is sort of like a fake channeling of a Jewish mystic. But the Jewish mystics really did say that the world that we are living in was created by the Word of God. So the alphabet is actually the creator of the world. All the world is to be found in the letters of the alphabet. So this poem is an abecedarium. There's a whole bunch of poems that start with A, a whole bunch of poems that start with B, C, D, E, and all through the alphabet. And all of them I'm trying to channel this sort of mystical understanding of the old rabbis who were poring over texts and getting themselves all confused and upset and transcendent. So I'm going to read you P. These are the poems that start with P. Place is code, perceptions collapsing. When heart halts, poor world, shatters on a dime, you shed the wet, so row the boat that bears you on. Mend the shove, snap the thread, cry out that all is red, though everyone takes the little they need to get by on. And everyone's always dead. P. Plastic words. Not barking in the night's wet ink. Anything ever meant word as that. Practical platitudes for moving sheets and parsing. Two wrongs make a certain sort of right. A brighter contusion as head hardly meets whispering lung in the tough kernel of life's brain. P. Photos of fathers, mothers, sons, or self, frozen occasion, false memory, in constructed time frames, record suppositions. Such imaginal smallness takes spuming time in gripping pause, blaming worn eyesight with frayed feeling, literally spilling what it is. P. Plenitude simoleons grip the burners in their brash delight. White people rushing from counter to counter, its crashing sperm detachment flagrant in their waving themselves all about like flash debris. What's gone before is reaped, strange to present shape we're in, like rich nutrients welling up from dark cold depths in northern seas. The previous downtrodden spin arms wind in shaking sounds heard round the globe. Dog whistle frequencies, unheard by the gaslighters. Twinkle, twinkle, that level of genius. Barter this for that in gender-inflected frequencies now that have to do with the kind of power never before seen in these parts, but decisive. P. Preferred piece of prejudice. Naturally, every clan wants to press its advantage for good of genes and their swirling emotions, but that was then, long before limits in their hysteria simpered. Not every imagined outcome is simile for a smile. Despite objections, someone has to have a plan that's disentangled from shepherds. We need that emotion shivered over numbers, long in the tooth by now, and that much closer to the end. No one anticipates, because the words don't really take it into account. All talk about something, never nothing. So silent words are best. to redistribute this power we won't, can't name. How find comfort in a hurricane? P. Proceed, 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 proceed anyway. In silvery dew points at tips of great leaves, broken language speakers babble as long as able in ancient grove, before all words are lost. Incantations are effective. Here's a case in point. Words, world, tips at tipping point. Word tips. Solo, solo. Each similar to each, other similar to other, black, red, white, yellow, green, similar, 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 similar to similar. Stolen, shrunk, requited, similar, similar. Night pittosporum scent tells similar dark tales, senses cross wires, indicating constructed world. Times, soft objects, short, out. As long as we are never who we're going to be. Time stands still. Gives certain hope. Its future herein. The last P poem. Press gangs do the world's work. Property is theft, wages slavery. Justice, we shall do better, is love. Can I decry the fate that brought me to this pass? No. No more than lunging at sleeping dogs will fool the jailers. Leap outside technique or syntax. Consider alternatives to time and flesh. Floating in imaginary waters. No ownership of interactions in starburst. Obey the chain letter destiny has written. So, well, I was kind of I get into a very obsessive, strange mood. This is what happens. So here's a book called There Was a Clattering As, and this is my, it seems that every poet has now a pandemic book. A pandemic book. And the idea was, I just was so impressed with this little virus that is ambiguously alive. You know, is it a living being? We don't know if a virus is a living being. A bacteria is, but a virus may or may not be. This little virus, all it's trying to do is the same thing that everybody's trying to do, live and continue its life. And it's totally, it's just microscopic, nobody can see it, and the whole world comes to a crashing stop. I was so impressed with that. So I started getting interested in pandemics throughout history. There have been pandemics constantly. And I got into it. So this is a collage book. It's one continuous text. It has all kinds of things in it on that theme. One doesn't follow from the next necessarily, as in a collage. You just put things together in a way that makes sense, but not linearly. And so the passage I'm going to read for you sounds nothing like the rest of the book, but I just chose this particular passage because it was sort of interesting to me when I looked at it. And she was sure again now, as she had been for years, that he did not care or care sufficiently to bridge the gap inside her, caring enough that she'd feel whole, while he was fixed as he had ever been since youth on whatever it was he felt to do, to bring forth what was in him. He felt was not that, but rather a call of the world, faintly heard or not heard, yet somehow seized, and surprisingly to be so expressed. Fixed on that, he was unable at times to engage in normal human congruous a fact she took to mean, even after many years, that it was against her worth, to herself, her whole family, she felt disregarded in that, and they were now all gone, dead, all of them now. That it formed her, occupied her now, and they quaked at this time with her being ignored in this way, disregarded. And she must defend them so as to keep them alive, which she did in withdrawing. Not speak of, if speaking, spoke only out of this feeling, while he, feeling as always invisible in some literal sense, as if world went by as scenery in train's window, a train at night, when nothing to be seen but only sense of movement, that there were scenes passing by, landscapes, but couldn't see them in black window. And he was watching another world. And so could himself not be seen. Even to himself he could not be an object to take pleasure or displeasure in, but only a point. Not even in space, but in mind. So that the others who were in fact there in some way he could appreciate deserved all his care, but of course he was never able to give such care, for he wasn't there at all, in a way capable of administering it. So his failure of caring was total. While she, not knowing how this was so, in him, took it to heart for her own way of looking at things, had her own yawning interiorities, and all around them the darkness, not any literal darkness, for the 19th century sun shone on perfectly shaped sycamore trees in the formal park, matching and aligned perfectly, but the darkness of space itself, or of time, or of being, that flashes out so fast it could be said metaphorically to be darkness. And days pass that way, years and decades of misunderstanding, for how could understanding be possible in such a situation? And what could understanding be? Who understanding what in such flux of fractured emotion? And he felt this inward urge toward perfection, this certain vision of it, an image of it, like the garden. But even the garden wasn't perfect, was proof enough that God must be, for the perfect horizon in his mind, that projected critique that showed at all points his own imperfection to be total, yet caused him to express himself, striving on or out or up or in, crude prepositions, all misleading. Made it so clearly to be so. God, which was at least a life. But was it he or she, him, or was it her that felt what might have been a feeling between them that wasn't theirs? Did she feel what she felt because he felt what he felt? Or was it her feeling that activated his? And such feeling flowed back and forth between them, and each of them felt alone in the feeling that seemed so private, or blamed one another for the feeling that seemed so imposed. And in the end, what is a feeling but the mind's word scrap registered in the body and repeated and interpreted in a span of time in God's mind? Once we met my brother. He was ringing a bell. He needed an umbrella, but he would not buy it. I sent him one. Oh yes, the people are kind. They all drink together. Even now. No, Not now. Do you see the date palm? Do you see the fig tree? They grow in great abundance in the land. Whenever there are flowers, my mother is angry. That is to say, she is generous enough. All dark days are necessary. For all day. We do as we say it is best to do. Even religious people do so. So that's a little intense structure. How are we doing for time?
Doing great.
Everybody's all right?
Great.
Let's see about, I don't know about this. We'll see how this goes. So the next book is Men in Suits. And one interesting thing about this is that I was thinking about men in suits, and I was mad. I was really mad. This is a rant. This book is a rant. I was mad at the people who control the world, and they're not doing a good job, and they're doing it for themselves, and it really pissed me off. So I decided to write Men in Suits as an unrestrained rant about these people. And as I was doing this, I don't know how I came across it, but it turns out there was a woman in Maine who's a painter who was doing a series of paintings called Men in Suits with exactly the same intention. So this is her painting from that series, Men in Suits. It's a beautiful painting. She has like about 50 of these paintings. Anyway, the reason, we'll see how this goes. The thing about it is, I got into, actually, believe it or not, I got into reading The Wealth of Nations by good old, what's his name? Adam Smith, yeah. And I also read, not all of it, but part of Theory of Moral Sentiments, which is also Adam Smith. And so that's where this comes from. You have a cow, you need a sheep. You trade cow for sheep, but if you have cow and need yarn, you can't cut off a piece of cow to get yarn. Whole cow being worth much more than skein. All you need is skein, more to hoard rots, whereas cow lives, shits, grows, doesn't rot. So, you have chicken. But soon it seems you need some substance, can be made of ideas, fungible, one thing to stand for something else. Ideas. You use corn. Corn ideas make it stand for a chicken, a skein of yarn, a piece of a cow. But corn also rots, won't last long. So metal is better. You use copper or silver or gold, weighted on scale so can't be used up, isn't to eat or wear. Can with ideas stand for else wise, then stamp king's face on metal coin. King owns land used in common, collects rent. King protects, creates order, coin to purchase. Part of his stock, which he expects to supply him with revenue, is called capital. 3 ways capital can provide revenue. First, when used to raise, manufacture, or purchase goods to be sold at a profit. But profit no use unless it be exchanged for goods, so capital is always changing shape and form. It circulates. This is called circulating capital. Second, in improvement of land or purchase of machines and instruments of trade or such things as yield a revenue or profit without changing masters or circulating further. This is called fixed capital. The capital of a merchant is circulating capital. Capital of an artificer, a manufacturer is partly circulating capital in form of wages paid or the price of materials, which is repaid with a profit by the price of the work. In heavy manufacturing, much more fixed capital is required, but renting of a house, though it may yield revenue to its proprietor, who may not own it except through bank manipulation and deal-making facilitated by slippery laws made by false state stretch bent by lawyers who do not see text, use text in which there is actually no ownership, which requires a degree of loving attention, and thereby serves the function of capital to him. It cannot yield any to the public, nor serve in the function of capital to it, and the revenue of the whole body of the people can never, in the smallest degree, be increased by it, so the real estate business is productive only of the profit to its owners, but of no benefit to the society, but detriment only in that its revenues raise living costs of the many, causing pain, does not increase in any way capital's potential power to share or do good. Fixed capital is largely of four kinds: machines, the buildings in which machines are operated, improvements in land, and the acquired and useful abilities of all the members of a society that they be educated, enjoy well-being and happiness, and a positive attitude is the chiefest element of the fixed capital of a nation, that it prosper and retain a form of government that endures, since it is fair and just. Every fixed capital is derived from and requires to be continually supported by circulating capital, that which is not fixed and is constantly changing shape and form. All machines and buildings require workers who operate and maintain them. No fixed capital can yield revenue but by means of circulating capital. The most useful machines and instruments of trade will produce nothing without the circulating capital, which includes materials and workers who operate them. To maintain and augment the stock which may be reserved for immediate consumption is the sole end and purpose of fixed and circulating capital. It is this stock which feeds, clothes, and lodges the people. In all countries where there is tolerable security, every man of common understanding will endeavor to employ whatever stock he can command in either procuring present enjoyment or future profit for future enjoyment. In those unfortunate countries where men are continually afraid of the violence and duplicity of their superiors, they frequently bury or conceal a great part of their stock, including their souls, their states of mind, their happiness, and their intelligence, so as not to have it pilfered or threatened by any of the disasters to which they consider to themselves to be at all times exposed. It is therefore short-sighted and unsustainable for men in suits to exploit the social, fixed, and circulating capital, which, as we have seen, mix and support each other and cannot exist without each other, to the extent that the feeling of security and well-being is collapsed as if hurled off a cliff. While the logic of capital does churn momentum that becomes its own motivation, speed, losing sight of its original and necessary purposes, i.e., procuring enjoyment and sustenance for society's members, and the owners of fixed assets in later stages in the form of financial instruments, when actual material bases for production becomes abstracted, will find the constant exploitation of workers naturally nearly irresistible, due to drunken self-love. In fact, free workers cannot be endlessly exploited without eventual disastrous consequences. It would be as if a pile of hay were being heated slowly until it reached combustion temperature, or a load of snow piled continuously onto a roof till collapse. done, but I don't want to leave you with that. Just a little bit. This is the newest book, Through a Window. And we were just talking about Buddhist mind-only philosophy. And I was studying Buddhist mind-only philosophy, which has a lot to do with the psychology and the spirituality of perception itself. So I decided that I would give myself the assignment of sitting in front of my window and looking out the window and describing what I saw, which was the same thing, day after day after day. And study how it is that my mind was making this world up, and how it is that when I tried to describe it in words, things became very confusing. So these are short poems, and I'll just read a few of them. But this should have the effect of leaving you in a somewhat better mood. Evening's dark light covers sleek fox body moving left to right past window, makes sudden passing, obscure cypress branches, emotion against indigo, sky desk lamp, light pool, makes outdoors dreamy dark, a quiet ethereal, more and less real than thought. Nothing moves when time's stopped. If no wind now, where owls hoot, is yellow, or slight drops of white in dark sky, gleams where last of settled sun, or first of risen moon, quarter full, begins its influence each instance. What lights here lessens what dark becomes dream. Approach in minds swerve toward night's coming. Live light mist creeps across image, birds chirp, silver or cars, silver cover blurs, edges like obscure car, ghost trees, limbs barely move, new lights brighter, a moment, then again, not. In general, silence, what's stopped mind, look, listen to wheeling worlds, motion, time falling, slow-mo off cliff where we live. Leaves on leaves in layers of leaves, some brown. Pine needle clumps, one. Thin. Acacia. Branchlet with delicate leaves lacy against gray blue sky. Oh, you are such an excitement, little nuthatch, fussing and poking here and there.
Wow.
That's photographs too, isn't it? And okay, last one. The last poem. Thank you so much for your attention. You guys are great. It's so hard to pay attention to anything for more than a minute, right? Thank you. It's really important for me because I can tell if people are paying attention, and when people are not paying attention, I get really tired, and it's hard to go on, so you make it easy to go on. Last poem. Shouting worlds elsewhere. Dusky mauve sky surrounds somber leafy trees. Lamps reflection, circle of light above in reflection. So one sees inside outside in one glass. Quiet evening last bird song.
Thank you, Norman. Norman Fischer, everybody. Thank you, Charles. Charles, I'd like to thank everyone. Thank you all for being here. Please. What's that? Oh, yes, that's right. A Q&A time. Sorry. So perhaps we don't need to be at the mic to do that, and folks could just ask our poets questions. I will open up the door so ambient noise may come in, but I think we can just talk to each other. So let's start asking questions. Thank you for reminding me that thing.
I had something for Norman. I guess I was listening to Men in Suits, and so same thing with Men in Suits. It seemed like there was Adam Smith, and then there was some Norman. And two things that were strange to me about it that I loved. One is it's not so clear. It's not like one argument is parodying the other or refuting the other. There's a pretty subtle relation between those two. And in a similar way with the language, it's like, would Emerson sort of talk that way? Well, yes, 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 well, maybe no. And in the same thing with the Adam Smith, I thought when you got to the hay that heated to a certain point that it's combustion, it's like, well, that's not the way Adam Smith would talk or write. So I'm just wondering about the degree to which you're sort of overlapping with those texts and also doing something a little different in a pretty subtle and variable way. If you could say anything about that.
Yes, did you hear all that? Yeah. Well, now I will reveal a trade secret. When I discovered that all these texts, like Emerson and like Adam Smith, are free downloads right, on their device because copyright is gone, and that you could copy and paste, it was irresistible. So that I could copy and paste an entire passage. And then the other thing is that one thing, I don't know that any of the lines that I read tonight say this directly, but I seem to say every other line in all my poems, the thought, which I'm very conscious of, that there's not a single word that I ever write in a poem that somebody else also didn't write in a poem or speak or say. That it's just the language is coming through everybody, right? And we're all saying the same words in everybody's mouth. So there's no such thing as an original sentence, right? I mean, every sentence is original, but all the words are recycled. So when I'm pasting a copy of a paragraph of Adam Smith, I'm feeling like I'm writing this. And it's not Adam Smith. So if I agree with it and Adam Smith says it, okay, it's mine. But if I don't like it, I say, wait a minute. So that's what I do. So I'm sitting there rewriting Adam Smith and rewriting Emerson, and I don't have, I have, because I have an intention and something I'm thinking that really is expressed by Adam Smith's passage or Emerson's passage, I know what I'm doing with it, although I couldn't explain it. I have a feeling, right? A feeling about it. So I use the text, and insofar as it suits the feeling, I keep it. And insofar as it needs to be changed, I just change it. So it's pretty improvised. But and then there's no particular theory, but that's how I do it.
Thanks.
Yeah. So there's sort of no end to that, right? Like long books in a couple of days, right? It's a copy of it.
We're on the verge of in the public domain with Gertrude Stein too.
Yes, that's going to be good.
I'm wondering, my working life, what part is fixed capital and what part is circulating capital?
Well, the press is fixed capital. Right?
But is
Physical
paper
press.
fixed capital?
No,
Because you
no,
keep,
I think
it's a consumable.
it's a consumable.
Yeah,
consumable.
fixed capital is not consumable.
Yeah, fixed capital is stuff that
Except by five.
you have to, what do they call it?
so workers are consumable.
Workers are consumable.
Workers
not
are,
fixed
what was the word? Not fixed capital, but
Cir-
circulating.
circulating capital.
Right. And so, but I just find, what I find really objectionable, and it sort of comes out of the passage, is the abstraction. That there's, just in the last couple of decades, we've seen a level of abstraction in commerce just go through the roof. And it just creates such distortions in human interaction. You know? Because there are people who don't do anything or manufacture anything or know anything about anything, push buttons around and make billions of dollars without any relationship to anything made or done.
Yeah, I think there's something like that going on in media, too.
Yeah.
As it seems like all of a sudden, a few months ago, everything our current administration is doing is reported on most media as just what they're doing. You know, no sense that there's anything wrong with it. No,
Yeah, cryptocurrency is the ultimate. I mean, I don't understand these things, so in a certain way, I can't really complain about them because I have no idea what they are. But it just bugs me. It just seems so removed from. I mean, you know, people live and die and struggle and suffer every day, and this whole thing has nothing to do with that. And that's the thing. The point of the passage is, what's it all for to begin with? It's for human beings to live and have some happiness. And, you know, and take care of
And that's in,
that's what it's all supposed to be for.
And that's in Adam Smith too, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
People, I mean, you know, what Milton Friedman made out of Adam Smith doesn't have all that much to do with what Adam Smith was talking about. That's the thing.
No, he undid a lot of things. Better economist is John Maynard Keynes.
Yeah.
Someone who had some humanity.
Yeah. Milton Friedman really perverted. Took a little bit out of Adam Smith and forgot the rest.
So we have to be ethical about how much we copy, how much we cover
Well,
It's like what happened with Darwin.
I mean, the book does have a appendix with all the sources.
One thing that really struck me though about both of you is that first of all, it almost seemed like it was one person reading.
Yes, I had that feeling too.
The last thing you read and the first thing you read.
Yeah, exactly.
The phrase that really struck me was the world elsewhere. And your sense of the prepositions, but not direct, but they're oblique.
Also, this world and another world.
And I think that's kind of the same thing, but in a poetic and a human register. It's the crypto, all that stuff that's happening in the economy. But maybe this is a way to do it intentionally in a way. So it's the world is not here, or we are who we are, but we can look for it in a way that's not consumptive or collective.
Well, what's interesting to me about Zen teaching is that, if I understand it properly, that you just said, and the two are exactly the same, right? So it's not the other world. This world is not this world. It's the other world, and the other world is not the other world. It's this world, and they're one and the same. And so that's the kind of mystery of it. It's all right here. It's not elsewhere, and yet right here is not as it appears to be. Even though we're all living it, right? We're all living it. Even the crazy crypto geniuses, I mean, they can't escape. You know, they can't escape their mortality.
I was going to say sort of a similar thing about your work, Charles, what Steve just said and then what Norman said, that it seems like there's a lot of it, maybe it's pandemic era especially, but it's very focused inward on the household and the yard and a kind of rumination that grows out of that. And it seems like you have a very sure sense of the way in which that is a resource that goes way beyond the locale that it's writing about, that there's some real power and sustenance and even contestation in it or something like that.
And also, I think a part of a lack of separation among all those things you talk about, in my mind anyway, it kind of relates to, like the Buddhist Thich Nhat Hanh sense of interbeing, and that we are all interbound with each other, including those things you see every day and those things. But if you understand that, then that reaches out so much wider too. But you can't get, but also you don't want to go too abstract. You want to just be there when that works on.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about, is sort of like thinking about abstraction and what Steve said about ethics and what we're talking about. Sort of like, I wanted to ask you both sort of what you think about poetry's relationship of relating word and thing. Like what's how do words and things get related?
And may I beg you guys to speak just a little bit louder?
Yeah. Did you hear
Oh,
me?
okay.
I heard you,
Okay.
yes, but there's,
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of the basic play of language, isn't it? Words are words, and words stand for things, and are words things in themselves. I play with that in my work, and I love the sense of both finding that the words are things, but also unwinding it too. Kind of unbinding it. I don't know what else I can say about that.
Yeah, I know it's a hard question.
Yeah, and metaphor.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think I should just drop metaphor. And what you're talking about with collage has more to do with gaining meaning by one thing next to each other, and that's metonymy. Which is a very different way and a very wonderful way of proceeding. But you don't necessarily lose metaphor just because you do the other things.
I feel like Norman kind of spoke to that question as you introduced the abecedarium, harking back to the Jewish tradition, and I feel like that kind of takes us back to this question about world elsewhere, world here, and in the dimension of language.
Yeah. Well, it's a real mystery, because on the one hand, the word is nothing like the thing that it refers to whatsoever. There's no connection at all. And yet words do have meanings, right? And so a word can't be, I guess if you're listening to words in another language and it's just sound, you have no idea what it means. But in your own language, a word, you can't forget that it has a meaning. So it's the mystery of that. So I think, to me, that's the essential thing about poetry, is that it's always, no matter what kind of poetry it is, it's always dealing in that strange connection between a word and that to which the word refers. It's problematic and weird and essentially unknown. In other kinds of writing, I think you sort of assume it, and then you go on from there. Although you can read any text with a poet's eye and see it totally differently. But I think that is to me, that is the territory of poetry. And to me, that's the only thing poetry is ever about. And then when you think about it, human beings are thinking animals. There's no human being without human thinking, human consciousness. And human consciousness is 100% language consciousness, some form of semiotics, and usually language. So then it's not just language we're talking about human consciousness, and the mystery of human consciousness in a world in which, as we know, from science, right? Solid objects are not solid. What we see is not what's out there, et cetera, et cetera. These are like scientific facts, right? So the human consciousness is definitely creating a world that is oppressive, but possible, potentially liberating, ecstatic, fill in the blank, and everything else. And I think that's the territory of poetry.
Well, I love too, meaning of word or meaning of words, it's social. It's a social agreement on what
That's right.
meaning is. And what I love about what poetry can do is put a little wedge in there so that agreement is not automatic.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What about the tyranny of language? There is a kind of a tyranny.
Well, and there are people who use language as a manipulation, and that becomes a kind of tyranny too. I don't know if I quite believe in the tyranny of language itself, but I do believe in the misuse of language for tyrannical purposes. That happens all the time. Happens every time you turn on a commercial on the TV set, and certainly others. areas.
Even the way that we talk about like nature as it's, it's like our relationship with the world in language, it kind of sucks.
Oh, yeah.
We need new language.
Well, that's been so obvious in the ways we talk about gender, and how people have made us question our assumptions in that regard.
Maybe that's our mission statement after 30 years. We need new language.
Yeah, I think that's what poetry's always trying to do, is undo that tyranny.
At least point to the gap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least show it for
Where
what
we
it is.
live,
Yeah.
Well, there doesn't have to be a gap. I mean, read Martin Buber, buy it down, There's a joining.
Yeah, because it seems like the cryptocurrency or financialization is about being inside that gap, though. And poetry is about somehow breaking it open to suture it back together.
Yeah.
But poetry as a test of the language, in Tchaikovsky sense,
Or in Freud's sense of the uncanny, where he thinks it's where you get to those points where things maybe don't make sense, that they're learning, their potential for new kind of meanings. Now, I'm not a Freud expert, so somebody might dispute that. But
In your poetry, Norman, I get it's sort of related to Yogacara stuff, but there's a feeling sometimes that even though it's impossible, all of a sudden there is an outside and it's visible and you just fell into it and you are it. And, it's like, so the language is not an impediment anymore. It opens beyond itself and makes something really movingly evident and available, and we're not sure quite what it is or how we got there, but oops, it happened.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that there'll be a line suddenly that appears like that. So I think that there could be a line as a koan, like function.
It's like the end of praise, it's like nothing to leave behind, nothing to take away, just one body, it's like, oh.
I mean, the poem.
The long prose poem that you
Wow, you remember that?
Yeah,
That's like
I
from 40
remember
years
that
ago.
because it did that.
I don't remember.
I know, yeah.
Thank you.
It worked for me, yeah. It didn't work for you, but it worked for me.
Wow.
Say thank you once
Thank
more.
you.